So, an Adola burst is a flame from this other dimension. But if they don't come from Earth, then how do I have one? Tell me.
Because absolute power cannot be confined to any one world.
Yeah? What's that mean? And as long as I've got you here, is this place the source of spontaneous human combustion? I'm seeing this through our Adola link, right? What is it really?
Hello everybody, Megazard here. I'm back at it again to give y'all another very exciting episode review over Fire Force, and this time I'm going to be reviewing episode 22, A Brother's Determination. And if you haven't already watched my episode 21 review over Fire Force last week, you can go ahead and click that card in the corner and check that video out, and then come back and check this one though, because oh boy, man, this episode right here, woo-wee. Man, I've been waiting for Shinra and the show to go really head-to-head in this, and for the most part, it did sort of kind of feel like it was a one-sided fight, but it was like towards like the sort of kind of the middle of the episode and starting to kind of get towards the third quarter of the episode. I was like, dang, Shinra is breaking past his limits like none other, and I was like, man, this is some, oh my gosh. Like, I just, ooh. Man, I wish I would have recorded my reaction on this one, though, because this one, I was all over the place. Man, if you just really like action, you're really going to enjoy this one, though, but not too much more to say in terms of just raw impressions before I do my deep dive in this review. So let's go ahead and get into it, though. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive straight up into this episode 22 review of Fire Force.
It's the underworld, Adola. But you'd know it by the name it received from the first people who saw it. Hell. You look upon the evangelist, knave. The one who protects me, who grants me strength.
Alright, so starting off at the very beginning of the episode, we just get to see like two of the white clad members just kind of just talking to each other like that, and they were like, oh shoot, you know what, Shinra finally ran in the show now, so essentially, hey, we're about to get some really good fighting now, and he's like, I better go ahead and find a place to go ahead and spectate on. And then this other woman kind of shows up out of nowhere, and what's her name, Hamai, and you know, she just kind of snuck up on them, and he was like, oh, you know what, I was like, man, don't scare me like that, she's a woman. And then, you know, and they were like, all right, let's go ahead and get into some spectator seats though. But then you get to see Shinra and Sho basically in the same realm as in the previous episode. And essentially, you know, they're in this like big old realm where it's like nothing but like a bunch of like, you know, broken bodies or something like that, black mist, kind of haze, kind of look like, you know, ash is falling, but in the reverse, kind of going towards the sky. And then they start to get into a conversation of talking about the whole entire evangelist thing and about the whole entire, you know, about show and in terms of like the Adola burst and things of that nature though. So overall it was getting really interesting though, but the key things that you have to highlight in terms of what he basically said in this thing was that there was one moment that he, you know, Shinra was saying, you know, well, is this where, you know, human combustion essentially comes from though? And Sho basically replied like, hey, you know what, the Adola burst is essentially, you know, located from here, but somehow the Adola burst managed to get from this strange place to our modern world. And, you know, it was through the works of the evangelist. He was like, wait a minute, if this power didn't even originate in our standard Earth, yet we do have the whole entire human combustion thing coming over here, how in the world did it bust from one world to the other? And he said, no, this power is so great that it can, you know, influence other worlds and stuff. And the big thing to take away from this is the weird place that they're called, or the weird place that they're in right now, is actually called the Underworld Adola, aka Hell. And I was like, oh shoot, so Fire Force definitely went down that road. So essentially, it's like, if you're thinking about it, the whole entire time of this, during this anime, you basically had, you know, the good side of things and the bad side of things. And in terms of the white clad and what the evangelists and what they're talking about, which we actually got to see a look at what the evangelists look like, and he just kind of looked like, you know, a big ominous kind of threat. And it was like we couldn't get a good grasp on him. Like, he wasn't moving, he was just kind of smiling, kind of a little cocky and whatnot. And I was like, dang, I was like, okay, so this is what this dude is basically basically about. But essentially at this point, if they basically said that that underworld Adola, which AKA is what is called hell, which is basically everybody that the people that they sort of kind of been worshiping or something like that, in terms of like what Sister Iris has been doing since she's been filling in that priest role or whatever. Basically they gave that term hell for this whole term of the Adola, or the underworld Adola. So basically what I'm thinking is these white clan members were basically like demon worshippers to an extent. Like this is literally what this anime is, in terms of the antagonist side, is what we're dealing with. So essentially, is the evangelist another term for the devil? Which, they always been talking about these devil footprints and whatnot, though. So now, in terms of them saying, this underworld Adola is hell, what, those devil footprints is starting to actually make sense now, in terms of, this weird place that Sho is actually here. And essentially, the Adola burst, Sho has one and Shinra has one. And when they make these Adola links, like for example Sho, he's making that link to the evangelist himself, and thus that's how he's getting his crazy strange powers from. But also, Shinra has one as well. So they were just kind of breaking all of that, all those details down during that moment though. And essentially they get brought back to the real world. And over here, Lick was basically sort of kind of giving us some play-by-play in terms of what all Sho was doing, as well as what all Shinra was doing as well during this fight though. And essentially we figure out, thanks to Lick's analysis, we figure out that Sho is essentially heating up and cooling down the universe, and he's doing that to such a great extent that is what actually caused the Sho to be able to freeze time. And in that in itself is pretty crazy, even for a Shonen Jump anime like this. I was like, well, dang, I'm like, okay, this is some really crazy mess. And that explains why Sho is basically able to outmaneuver Shinra, and no matter what type of action that they're going through. So, he would be flying through the air, sticking a sword down Shinra's back. And, it's sort of kind of an unfair fight because of the fact that Sho is, using a sword, and Shinra, is basically only using his, his fist and his feet. Pretty much for the most part though, but that kind of makes sense to a degree because of the fact that Shinra is Sho's brother, and Shinra still values Sho in terms of him being a brother though, but Sho keeps pushing aside all those kind of thoughts because he's like, how in the world can you show up out of nowhere and claim to be my brother? Like, don't show up in my life in the middle of all of this and claim to say that you're my brother. Like, this is getting really annoying, man. Like, you gotta stop this mess. And essentially, they keep going through all of this back and forth arguments and stuff. And eventually, Shinra comes down to the conclusion that, hey, in order for me to beat Sho, I'm going to have to tap into that evangelist power. So I basically going to have to use my Adola burst and sort of do an Adola link in some way, shape, or form. But Sho over here basically tells him, said, hey, you know what? You ain't going to be able to do any of that stuff without having the so-called quote-unquote blessing. So basically Sho has that connection with the evangelist, and he has his blessing, and through that blessing he's able to do all that crazy stuff, as stopping time and being able to freeze time and being able to basically counter anything Shinra is throwing at him though. But good gracious, Shinra and Sho, oh my gosh, that tongue twister though. But anyway, Shinra basically says, you know what, there's got to be a way for me to do this, because he starts to reflect back in the past during certain moments where he tapped into his Adola burst power. And the two examples of this was whenever he had Lieutenant Conro basically call out for a need of help. That was one example. And then the second example was Dr. Giovanni's bloodlust, whenever he was about to say, you know what, we got to kill Vulcan. And he was like, in those two moments, I was able to tap into my Adola burst and sort of kind of form an Adola link with those people. So he's like, you know what, even though I can't get a blessing from the evangelist himself, if I can make a connection with Sho, who Sho has that connection with the evangelist, then I might be able to get somewhere. So then he's like, you know what? At first it was all on accident with those first two scenarios though, and I was basically on the receiving end. So now I gotta go on the offensive and actually ignite that Adola burst within me and actually activate it on purpose. So then you get to see Shinra and Sho just kind of battling out, and Shinra's still getting a beating though. But then he starts to reflect back and say, you know what, there's a lot of different people I can trust. You start to see all the Company 8 members. You got to see Captain Hibana. You got to see the lieutenant from Company 1. Then you got to see Lieutenant Conro, and then you got to see Captain Benimaru. And he's like, all of these people I trust. all these people I rely on and stuff. And he's like, I cannot fail them now. So it's like, you know what? Even though I might be struggling right now, I gotta push beyond my limits. And then this is where things really get interesting, because he puts his all into this one final surge. And he's like, I gotta go faster. I gotta go faster. I gotta go faster. And all of a sudden his body splits up and it disappears. And then you get to see Sho seeing, you know, in a slow down state. And he's like, what the heck? He's like, where did Shinra go? And he starts looking around. He's like, wait. He's like, for some oddball reason, Shinra just up and disappeared. And he's like, this is crazy. Like, why in the world? Like, I'm the only one that can control this realm, this slow down realm. It's like, that doesn't make sense. And he's like, well, you know what? Maybe I should go back. He's like, whoa. I shouldn't go back yet until I actually figure out, you know, exactly what in the world is going on. And, you know, eventually, you know, Sho actually has a limit to how long he can basically freeze the whole entire Earth. And he was like, dang, I gotta figure this out though. But then momentarily, we get taken out of the battle scene for just a quick moment, and we get to see jump back to Company 1. And we get to notice, you know, one of the lieutenants, he was basically like, whoa, what the heck is going on? It's like, man, there's a lot more earthquakes and stuff. And then you get to see basically this new recruitment in terms of, you know, because, you know, at first, you know, the previous lieutenant that was there, you know, he was basically with the white clad and associating with them. So basically, you know, he was, you know, through all of that stuff, he got killed and whatnot though, but he wasn't going to return back anyway though. So anyway, they replaced him with Onyango. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Onyango. Anyway, he's the one that basically replaces Lieutenant Rekka. And he basically had to come out of retirement at that point though. And then you get to see Captain Burns actually walk up in here, and he was like, dang, I really did not want to get Shinra involved into all of this mess. So that might go to say, you know what, Captain Burns actually probably knew about that, you know, weird backstory with Shinra back in the past though. So that is going to be another interesting conversation for Shinra to actually have with Captain Burns some point in the later future though. But then we get brought back into the thick of the fight, and Sho was still looking around like, okay, you know what, I can't, you know, my limit is about bursted. So then he turns the speed of the world back to normal though, and then all of a sudden you just see, boom, there was this big old explosion, and he was like, man, what the heck was that? And then Shinra was over here busted up on top of some revel and just knocked out a whole entire column. And then he was like, whoa. He's like, wait a minute, how did you get from point A to point B that fast? Like, that didn't make any sense. And then essentially he figures out that, hey, Shinra was actually moving faster than what I could actually slow down time. And it was at this point where Professor Licht over here was looking at both of them. He's like, whoa, what the heck is going on? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. And he's over here kind of like just clenching his head and stuff. And he's like, whoa. He's like, I don't know what, you know, I don't understand how this stuff is playing out. And he starts thinking about it. He's like, you know what? And eventually the conclusion that Professor Licht comes down to is the fact that Shinra moves so fast that he's actually moving faster than the speed of light. And thus, you know, that's able to cancel out Sho's, you know, freezing time due to, you know, heating and cooling up the whole entire universe. So essentially now Shinra has the speed in order to fight him. However, this is the first time he's ever been able to pull this mess off. So he basically, you know, doesn't have super good control over it, so that way he was always, you know, for the most part, always still missing Sho, even after he still managed to get a little bit faster than him. So then you get to see him kind of bouncing back and forth, and, you know, he's slowly trying to get a grip of it, you know, knocking down more columns instead of, you know, hitting Sho along the way though. And then he basically turns this whole entire scenario to a game of tag. And throughout this whole entire fight, he's starting to make links with Sho, and that's how he started to actually, you know, be able to actually combat him and be able to fight against him though. But there was one moment where Sho was like, you know what, as long as I can activate my slowdown time, there's no way you're gonna be able to beat me. But then it was at this moment where even though Shinra was frozen, he still managed to get enough speed within him to move even in his dimension. So now he basically found a way to be able to fight even in Sho's slowdown time. Hence, because the fact of the matter that he was moving faster than the speed of light, he can slow himself down just enough to where he can just be, you know, moving around normally within Sho's slowdown time effect though. So anyway, you get to see these two kind of going neck and neck, and then this is where the battle for the most part almost seemed pretty even throughout the whole entire part of the rest of this fight. And, you know, you just got to see him struggling blow for blow. You got to see more memories with the links that Shinra is forming with Sho in terms of his past and how he was young, and it's really irritating and getting underneath Sho's skin and whatnot though. And then you get to see those other two white clad members in the background, and they were still kind of talking about the whole scenario that was going down though. But that one woman basically said, you know what, Shinra is basically, you know, awakening his Adola burst powers, and basically you could basically call this the awakening of a 4th generation pyrokinetic, which was also really cool because, you know, we had, you know, 2nd gen, 3rd gen though, but this is technically what you could be called as your first type of a 4th generation pyrokinetic. So all of that in itself was really cool though too. And then moving on, we get near the very end of the episode though, and then this is where things start to take a turn for the worse, because even though Shinra was, you know, almost about on the equal level of Sho at that point though, it was at this point where it was the turning point in the battle. And this was the point where Shinra started to overheat, and he was like, oh shoot. So we know in times past, when people overheat, it's because they use all the oxygen up within their body, so they can't be able to move around anymore with using their pyrokinetic powers. However, if you try to attempt using your pyrokinetic powers while you're in the state of overheating, that's where you can do permanent damage to your body. And we got to see that through Conro whenever he actually had to fight one of those Infernos back in the past though. But at this moment, you know, this is where Lick started jumping in and said, hey, look, man, you cannot use your powers anymore. We're basically either going to have to run or give up or do something. Try to find a way to fight another day, because you cannot afford to fight while being in an overheated state. And especially when he said, you know what, when you were moving faster than the speed of light, you basically were breaking down your whole entire you were breaking down your matter to the point where you were going down and going through like multiple different particles. So the moment that you reformed yourself, you know, that was a whole lot of stress on your body though. But imagine trying to do that mess when you're in the state of overheating. You possibly could not put your body back together after moving that fast. Hence, you basically would kill yourself while trying to activate and use that move. Forget about that damage that Conro had whenever he used his powers whenever he was overheated. No, Shinra just gonna be up and dead, or there wouldn't even be any kind of form or anything of his body left. And that's where things got really interesting though. But then Shinra's like, you know what, despite this, I'm still gonna stand up for you, Sho, because I'm your big brother and I can't just leave you in the state that you are in. And, you know, Lick was like, what the heck, man? You can't go with this. And Shinra's like, no. I got to do this because I was coming in here for a mission, and I'm going to get this job done no matter what. And that is essentially where the episode ends, right whenever he was just talking to Sho. And oh, shoot, this episode as a whole, dang, this was really exciting. And we got to see some questions finally answered about, you know, Sho in terms of the evangelist, what that weird world was like, and everything else of that nature. And we're starting to get a lot more answers for our questions though. The only big thing is who or what the evangelist actually is, which to my point and understanding, I'm still thinking he's basically essentially the devil or whatever though. Essentially that's what I'm kind of coming down to though. But overall, I'll be curious to see what your thoughts about this whole entire episode, what you thought about this episode down in the comment section below, because man, this one was a really interesting one. And that's pretty much it for this review though, for this week though. But I do have a little bit of a news update for y'all, because, you know, at the end of this episode, you know, normally we'll have episode 23 next week though. However, there was a news update that happened earlier today at the time of this recording, when I'm recording this on a Friday. Basically, we're gonna have episode 23 and episode 24 air next week. So essentially, you know, with episode 23 and episode 24 airing next week, at least for the Japan side of things, hey, that means that we're basically going to get the last 2 episodes next week. So in terms of my reviews, as long as, you know, we get episode 23 and 24 through Funimation next week, then essentially my very last review for Fire Force is going to happen next week. So that means it's basically going to be an episode 23 and episode 24 double in one review, like I sort of kind of did earlier within the season with a couple of episodes that I put together because I had to miss it due to some unfortunate circumstances though. But overall, man, we're getting down to the very end, so to think we only got one more week left for Fire Force for us to watch, and then we just basically got to wait for the news update, because they essentially confirmed earlier before the start of Fire Force that there was supposed to be 48 episodes. So I'm thinking, you know, we get in these first 24, they got to take a break because, you know, it takes a lot of time, work, energy, you know, money, all that good stuff. It takes a lot of time in order to make an anime. So I imagine they have to go through a break before they started back up. And my prediction is they're going to come back in summer 2020 to kickstart this anime back up though. But that's about it for it in terms of the news update though. So yeah, so we should be getting the last 2 episodes of Fire Force next week though. But that's about it for this review though, so make sure to tune in next time for my episode 23 review, as well as what should be my episode 24 review. And the episode 23 review is Smiles, and we do not know the name for the episode 24 review though, but I guess we won't know that essentially until the episode actually drops next week though. But yeah, that's about it for this review though, so remember y'all, until whatever video I make next, see y'all.
Stop putting things into my head. These visions disgust me.
Don't do it, Shiinra! You won't be able to come back this time!
I will come back. Because I refuse to leave you alone, you hear me? If I left you to fend for yourself again, then what kind of big brother would I be?